Hello, my name is Dan Johnson. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the final part of Doctor Who Series 13, aka Flux, entitled The Vanquishers. And this was one hell of an episode. We knew full well that going into this one, there was a lot to do. You know, I talked about it in the prediction video that there was like 6 or 7 plots in a 60-minute episode. That's less than 10 minutes each. There's an awful lot of stuff to be done. Did it manage to do it? I'll get on with the review, shall I? I was surprised by the main bulk of the plot for this episode. I felt like it was just such a breakneck pace that it really made me excited for the show and for what was going to happen next. And it really blew me away. I'm still slightly uncomprehending of what I've seen, because like there were a few moments when I kind of wanted to like fist bump the air, like the bit when Vinder and Bell take out the Sontarans, communicators and stuff. I thought that's such a cool scene, and I watch a lot of scenes from previous years, so I've been kind of obsessed with the time of the Doctor speech when he comes up and explodes in the tower, regenerates in the tower, and I've been watching that a few times, and that gave me the same effect, and I think that is just a credit to Chris Chibnall. I think that he's been able to surprisingly manage a lot of the plot threads that I thought he couldn't do. The Great Serpent thing was in there quite well. I mean, I think the whole Great Serpent thing has been rushed throughout the series, just weirdly woven in at odd points. I just thought that was bizarre. But overall, it makes sense, and it has an ending and a middle and a backstory and stuff. The Bell Vinder thing was just a sweet little thing for them as characters. You have Carvanista and you have the Sontarans again, and all of that has just been really well handled for me. I don't know whether it's because I've personally just found attachment to these characters for whatever reason. I don't think it's necessarily something that the plot's done, but it just might have been that for me, I felt that attachment to them due to, watching the episodes like 2 or 3 times, fully comprehending the episodes and digesting it and doing videos on it. It's kind of meant that I've kind of really enjoyed the characters that we've had, and there's a small glimpse that I'm gonna miss them now that we have finished Flux. Other points of plot were, of course, the Timeless Children arc, the Division stuff, and I think, for me personally, I quite liked how they handled that, because I didn't want a whole new backstory of the Doctor completely filled in, every detail, dotted I's, crossed T's, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want any of that, because I felt like that would cheapen the mystery of the Doctor, and I think that the Timeless Children, for me, the positive that I like about it is that it adds that mystery, and there's something not quite right here with that, and I like that element. But I think that if they were to expose it, which they probably will do in time, then it would take it away completely. I think there needs to be some explanation of the placing of Jo Martin's Doctor, that's for sure. So that, chronologically it makes more sense. If she's going to be pre-Hartnell, tell us she's pre-Hartnell. If she falls into the series 6B, season 6B theory, stick her in that theory. Just, you have to confirm it. But other than that, I don't think there are many secrets that we really need to have exposed that I'm desperately in need of having it to be exposed. And after the Timeless Children of that, exposition scenes and stuff like that, I'm not really into that. So her throwing that pocket watch at the end of the episode kind of made me think, okay, so I'm sure we'll come back to it, but hopefully we can get a good end now. A cemented end, which I think is good compared that we've had a 6-part epic. I think it had to end, even though it's not the end. There's still 3 more specials, but it's a concrete end for Flux, where it can be left off and picked back up at another time, which is something, if you look back at I haven't seen it, but the Key to Time season. People weren't always happy with that. Or if you take Trial of the Time Lord, what? The original plan was to have a cliffhanger, and people thought that, John Nathan Turner, I believe, thought that would be a terrible idea, because you've sat through this big 14-part adventure, and then you haven't had an end. And I'm glad that Chibnall thought the same. And then for Doctors and Companions. I said Doctors because there were 3 of them this week. And I think that is like the best possible way Chibnall could have handled it for me. Now, a lot of people say, the 3 Doctors look silly and all that kind of stuff, and I'll probably talk about that briefly later. But for me, narratively, I think 3 Doctors was the best way to do it, because otherwise, because the Doctor had to be in all of them, really. She had to have some involvement in all of them, because no one's really set up, apart from Yaz, to have such a degree of knowledge to be able to help in that way. So the Doctor has to be in all of them, and I thought that it was I wasn't on board with it to begin with, but as I kind of went on with it, I understood what its purpose was and was on board with it. And I think Jodie was doing an absolutely brilliant job. I think Flux has been her time completely. Like, she's really fitted into the character a lot better, and her lines are delivered a lot more naturally, I suppose, and I think that they've kind of got the humour right within her as well. They talk about, how the fact that she's like chaos and she's kind of dotting around and all types of stuff, and that is perfectly fine. And I think they've just found the right level of what's sort of cringy things for her to say and what's actually quite quirky for her to say. And as for her companions, Dan, Yaz, but I mean, there's a whole collection of them this week. I think that for Dan, Yaz, I think they're perfectly fine within the story. Again, John Bishop I've really liked since episode 1. Yaz, I'm beginning to like now. As for Dan, though, I have this weird quarrel where, concerning Di, she was in episode 3, and then since then he hasn't mentioned her and hasn't been worried about her. A couple of lines just slipped in there about getting back to her and getting to save her would be a good thing, I think, for his character. And I think there's an element of sadness within that story, though, for Dan, which I hope they come back to. But we'll have to see. Maybe I think they're already planning something there, because it makes no sense for them for her to change her mind for whatever reason. But my mum spent the entire episode saying that Di was some kind of alien or something, because she was far too resourceful and things like that. So we'll have to just see about that. But I suppose we can't see anymore. But I don't think that. But I just found like their relationship went into a very strange direction after being set up as being perfectly natural as a continuation. And then as for the other characters, Carvanista had some really interesting moments. I'm surprised, and in fact, I think that it would have been better if Carvanista died on that ship and not Jericho, because Carvanista has that quarrel against the Sontarans way more than Jericho does. Jericho hardly does. So why weren't they switched? I think that it would have been cool to see the person that we knew in episode 1 go out in episode 6. And for him to actually take revenge for the deaths of the Lupari. Because now he's just the last of his kind, and they've completely ignored it. And that's a bit of a shame. But as for everyone else, I think they were perfectly fine, well acted. Belle, Vinda, lovely little relationship. But other than that, I can't say much about them. I mean, I could easily have missed someone. Claire, for example, she had her moments, but other than that, she was just in the TARDIS. But I'm happy that we got a big TARDIS team that we were introduced to at various points during the series. So I felt like I knew all the people there that were with them, and it felt a lot like Journey's End in that regard. As for monsters this week, we have quite a lot. We got the Sontarans, mainly. The Sontarans, I thought they were epic in episode 2. I think they're even more epic here. They've got a much grander invasion, which I quite liked. And with the Grand Serpent, and I think that Craig Parkinson is playing that role brilliantly. It is a shame that he didn't get a little bit more menace to do within the story, if that makes sense. You know, if he was a little bit more in control, I think that would have been cool. And we weren't quite sure what their bargaining between the two of them was at all. And you know, his past is also kind of slightly cloudy. But I mean, it still makes sense. You can still understand that he was a dictator, a politician, or whatever, back on a different planet and escaped, came to Earth, and then sort of implanted himself in UNIT, broke it down, and then somehow teamed up with the Sontarans in order to invade. But it's just that small little detail about how they came together that is missing. But I can let that slide, I think, because he still wants the power, he still wants the invasion, so why wouldn't he fall to the Sontarans to give it to him? Then for Swarm and Azura, Azure, I think that they're like the best looking, like the coolest looking villains, and I've said this all series. They look brilliant, and I think they have quite a good appearance within this story. Overall, now we look back at it from beginning to end. But for me, there is a small issue where I feel like in the final story, from how they started to begin with, they were this huge threat past this idea that they had some connection to the Doctor and all that, and some of it's been cleared up, but at the end I just felt like they were a little bit wasted in that regard. I mean, just because I think I've taken a personal enjoyment of them as villains. I think maybe if I watch it again, and I will see that it does fit in, because at the time I thought, yeah, that was a good ending for them. That they failed, and because of that, they died. The end. But because they don't really have a plan, they're just kind of organisers of chaos. It's going to be quite difficult to give them a proper ending. And I might as well briefly mention the Cybermen and the Daleks, who made a brief appearance within the story. I mean, it was good. I'm glad that Chibnall went down the path to actually remove the Daleks and the Cybermen, and did it in quite a creative way. Because, as I said during my predictions videos, I said that it'd be very easy for him to just go, I've reset time, everything's different. All the planets are restored, the Cybermen are gone, the Daleks are gone, the world's restored, nothing ever happened. And obviously there's some issues with that, because now that a lot of the universe has been destroyed by the Flux, and there's the idea of a second universe somewhere running parallel, I suppose. So all of that's quite interesting, and I doubt will be picked up on again. But as for Daleks and Cybermen, I think that they were in the trailer just for the excitement, and then didn't really have much grasp on the story. But I mean, there was no room for them, to be honest. I didn't exactly miss them. As for highlights and lowlights this week, well, I mean, I had an awful lot of highlights, to be honest. Lots and lots and lots. But the coolest moment, I think, was the destruction of all of those Daleks and cyber ships. The fact that they had the time and they went to such effort that wasn't needed in order to destroy them all, and to see such a cool spectacle on the screen, I think was brilliant. Like I mentioned earlier, there was kind of like a fist bumpy moment when Bell and Vinder destroy the communications, defeating the Sontarans. Very cool, best moment of the episode. As for lowlights, my only issue is very simple, and it's about staging, it's about direction. I will have a bit of a critique about some of it. I don't know whether it breaks the 180 rule, but some of the cuts were quite jarring, especially the scenes when we're having two Doctors talk to each other. You're cutting from one side of the TARDIS to the other side. It might just be because you're seeing Jodie here, and then you're seeing Jodie here. So it looks weird to have that cut between the two. Because obviously she can't be in two places at once. And the cut between the two is also kind of done like that, with like a very quick pan. So maybe that's kind of disorientating. But I use them all the time. Like, that's like a really good way to do a shot. I really like that kind of pan shot. But there's lots of very strange camera work going on in this story. There's lots of pans, like it was bloody Star Wars and things like that. So that's my only real critique, though. I would go into negatives at this point, but I actually don't have any. I could say that the thing's a bit complicated, but I don't feel like that is fair. So I'm I can't believe this, but I'm going to skip the negative segment this week. Wow. And so the final subheading for Doctor Who Flux is feel. And for the final episode, the whole thing's just, as I mentioned, breakneck pace, never stopping, constantly going, just an absolute blazing ride. But I don't know whether that might have been because I've just seen it once at this point. Seeing it a few times, you might find that the things become quite jarring. It's a bit like, oh, we're kind of cutting from here to here to here, and nothing's really getting that space to breathe because we're moving constantly. We have more stuff to do, and because of that, you might not always comprehend what's happening within the story. But yeah, I'm really happy that we've actually got the closure that we needed from Flux. And that was always the thing running through all of the past 6 weeks, was that we won't get closure for Flux. And thankfully we did. They wrapped it up really well, and I'm very happy with it. So I'm planning to do a video next week, probably Monday, Tuesday, about Flux and whether it was a success or not. I will probably watch the episode again at that point. Have a look on the internet to see if there's any things that I've actually missed in terms of plots or anything that I should have brought up that I just didn't notice on my watching. And ask whether Flux was a proper success, but have a look at that on Monday, Tuesday. Other than that, we'll go back to normal programming from now on. We have a couple of videos coming out, a podcast episode. As it is the 5th of the month, I decided not to bring the podcast out today because it would be fighting against, obviously, Doctor Who reviews, and I don't really want it fighting. I want it to have its own space. So next week, next Friday, which is the 10th, I'm going to be having part 1 of the podcast episode with the Doctor Who guy talking about Christmas gifts for Whovians, and then part 2 is out 29th, 30th of December. And in between that, I've got videos like a room tour, and then, of course, a special Christmas video where I rank the Doctor Who Christmas specials. It's just a video essay that I'm working on at the minute, and it's quite a long one. But other than that, thank you very much for watching my Flux reviews. If you've watched the whole series, just thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. I loved replying to the comments and stuff like that I had on prediction videos and all of that. It's all been brilliant. It's been a good 6 weeks, but there's nothing else left to say. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I shall see you soon. Ow. Goodbye.